Good evening, everyone. I'm Yasmina de la Torre. I am a mom, a resident, a neighbor here at school, and I'm also an attorney practicing law in the state of Illinois. I'd like to thank you all for your service on the board. I know that this, especially these last couple weeks, but in the near past, you probably spent a lot more time than you ever imagined when you ran for this position. I know that it's been difficult for all of you, and I do thank you for your time and all of the efforts that you've put into your roles. The way that this board has handled the mask policy since February 4th is a travesty. It's a legal travesty, it's a travesty to the kids, and it needs to stop. I know that this school district and this board can pivot from a bad decision. I watched out my kitchen window how this board pivoted from a bad decision, and we now have a beautiful green park space that all of the kids in the community can enjoy. They were headed in a bad trajectory, and they realized it was bad and turned and found a better way to resolve the problem. As an attorney, I know that if you ask your attorneys the wrong question, you will get the wrong answer. If you ask me the question that leads me to give you the answer that you want, I, as an attorney, can find you that answer. That's what I do. That's my job. In this case, what I've seen, this board has been asking the wrong questions of its attorneys. The question is not, will we get in trouble if we keep the masks in place? The question is not, is there a straw that we can grasp that will keep the masks in place? The question here is, do we have a legal basis, a legal right to keep masks on these kids? The answer is simply no. The judicial branch has told you no. The legislature has now also told you no. There's no basis for the mask policy that we have. There's no legal basis, and it needs to end. There has been a misconception that I've heard that those of us who are against the mask policy are some kind of a minority. I don't know if my friends feel comfortable standing up, but I'd like you, if you're willing, and if you are against the mask policy for whatever reason, whatever, if it's your opinion, if it's about your child, it's about your circumstances, it's a legal opinion, if you'd like to stand up, I'd like the board to see how many people are against the mask. Now, it's not about popularity, but I just want that misconception to end right now. Our district should abandon its current rule. We should be mask optional, not in a few weeks after you've thought it over more, not after you've run up more legal fees to get, I'm not sure what kind of legal advice. It should end right now, tonight, effective immediately. Thank you very much for your time.
Is Mia Baruda.
Hi everyone, my name is Mina Baruda, and today I feel like our community is divided, but there are two things that we have in common. One, we love our children more than anything in this world, and we want to do what's best for them always. And the second is the last 2 years of this pandemic have been the most challenging for all of us to navigate. And what brings us here today is this. It took a long time for me to find a mask that my daughter felt comfortable wearing every day, that sat perfectly across her nose and allowed her to breathe the best that she could wearing a face covering. However, even though this is the only mask she will wear, she still tells me she gets nervous and her tummy hurts before putting it on. She cried early on in the year about going to school because it was so hot in her classroom that she couldn't breathe. And she continues to come home from school letting me know when her head hurts from wearing the mask. This is a child that loves school, our school, and it broke my heart to see her hesitant to go. But no one sees that. She goes to school and she puts on a brave face, and behind her mask she smiles because that's what they're taught to do. But you can't tell me that it doesn't weigh heavily on their hearts. We can't even begin to comprehend the impact this pandemic has had on our children developmentally, socially, emotionally, and mentally. There's been a significant rise in anxiety disorders, depression, OCD, eating disorders, and even suicide. After the ruling on the 15th, districts across Illinois began to make the right decision to go mask optional. 600 districts in Illinois have now put children first. But what does our school district decide? To wait. Because you feel constant changing back and forth would be disruptive. How is going from mask optional today to possibly back in masks disruptive? To whom? Our children would welcome it. They would have additional days where they could breathe fresh air, additional days of no anxiety and tummy aches, additional days of seeing their classmates' faces. And if the masks had to come back on after this ruling you are waiting for, then so be it. Illinois is now one of 8 states that has any kind of mask mandate within school. You don't need science to see that there's something wrong with this picture. You just need to tell the difference between colors. We are at a point in this pandemic where every adult and school-aged child can be vaccinated. And we are also at a point where this variant has become significantly less severe than previous variants per the CDC. So I don't understand why our decision is to wait. Why are you making our children suffer a minute longer than they have to because you feel change is disruptive? We don't need an off-ramp. We're not asking you to stop all mitigation efforts. We're not asking for everyone to remove their masks. We are just asking for choice. Anyone who chooses to can and should still wear a mask. For a district that prides themselves on developing a curriculum around social and emotional learning, who partners with Lurie's to teach our adolescents to be strong advocates for themselves and their bodies, what kind of conflicting message are we sending them when we don't allow them to advocate for themselves when it comes to masking, where we take their choice away? With these recent rulings, you now have even less legal ground in enforcing masks. So why are you waiting? I ask each of you to stop, reflect, get off this pandemic train, and tap into that small piece of you that is ready to go back to some type of form of normalcy, that is ready to allow choice and freedom. I know that each of you have that inside you. Put our children first, set aside your fears, have a growth mindset. Our children deserve choice and should be afforded the right to due process of the law. Thank you.
Next is Ms. Claire Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Claire Mitchell, parent of a 3rd grader and a kindergartner who has never experienced school or preschool unmasked. I appreciate this has been a period of unprecedented stress, and we do appreciate your service to our district. First of all, I want to be clear. No one is asking for masks to be removed. All we want as parents is to be afforded the choice on where and when we feel it is necessary to mask our kids. They have been your political theatre for 2 years. We want them back. We want to relieve the anxiety that they feel when they communicate with their peers and their teachers and cannot see facial expressions for additional and emotional context. We want to see their smiles. We want them to breathe air without a dirty, sweaty piece of cloth over their mouths. It is not their job to keep you or anyone else here safe. They are not your pawn to receive additional funding or gain political standing. They are our children. We're a district that puts a heavy emphasis on social and emotional learning, and we promote a healthy sense of well-being and body autonomy. Yet we are forcing our children to wear something on their face that they do not want to wear. And for what? Why? COVID-19 presents almost zero risk to children. The death rate in children with COVID-19 is 0.01%. A recently published study also shows that immunocompromised children and young people are at no increased risk of severe COVID-19. Overall, cases in our community are down. Hospitalizations down, ICU utilization down. With a vaccine and better treatment knowledge, this is no longer the public health emergency it once was. Adults are able to go to work in their offices and socialize in bars and restaurants with no mask and no social distancing, Yet we're still forcing our kids, who are the at least risk population, to wear masks 7+ hours a day. We all have to manage risks every day. Everything we do is associated to a risk. Coming here in this weather, there was a risk. We have to manage those risks through our own personal choices. If you're at a higher risk of complications from COVID-19, you have a choice to be vaccinated and wear an N95 mask. Following recent court rulings, 600 schools in Illinois are now mask optional, and that number is growing every day. When is it going to be our turn? Our children should not be wearing their masks for a minute longer. What else needs to happen to relieve our children of this burden? We do not need to wait to develop metrics. Metrics already exist. We do not need to continue to solicit advice from medical advisors who have not been appointed or who do not specialize in pediatric public health. Dr. Osborne and the board, I implore you to accept that we are hurting our children. Please commit to fixing this instead of doing acrobatics to justify our fear-based and illogical decisions. Thank you.
Melissa Mastros? Oh, I'm sorry. You're listed next, so.
She signed me
Oh, I
up.
apologize. Yeah.
She's making me do this. I want to be here. I want to get this too.
Robert Mastros, sorry.
So hi, my name's Rob Mastros. I've been a parent here of 3 children and alumni myself, class of 91. After getting married and moving out of the city, there was really only one school I want my kids to go to, and that was Avoca, District 37. It by far has the largest diverse group of students, parents of any school in the area, and is the most representative of what the outside world is like. However, I feel like we've lost our way here a little bit. I mean, in my eyes, what was once the crown jewel of schools on the North Shore is turned into a bit of a diamond in the rough now. I mean, for being such a tiny, insulated school, we closed our doors and then opened up the Pandora's box of remote learning. We then opened our doors and now mask our kids all day. Sadly, with our neighbors doing just the opposite. I mean, I don't know how that makes sense to anybody. I understand that in the beginning, this was the right approach. No one knew what was going to go on, what was going on, and it was the prudent thing to do. However, 2+ years in, and we're still treating our school like a nursing home, as opposed to a start-of-life facility, which this is. We can't go back in time to change things, unfortunately. But fortunately, we can make changes. Now, we can make the right changes. I think if everyone just sort of strips out the politics, turns off the news, gets off social media, and just look at the data we have now, I mean, it should smooth the way. This is going to be an easy transition. Don't make something that it's not. What we know? Well, I looked at these studies, and there really isn't one that shows masking works. I've looked, there's just not. Yeah, you can cherry pick some data out of certain studies over a short enough period of time, but if you unfold the entire study, it becomes obvious. There is no gold standard study that anyone can reference. I mean, in fact, there's 40 some odd studies saying how masks don't work. After 2 years, I mean, what we have now is a luxury of time. After 2 years, we can see mask optional counties, cities, states, and mask mandate cities, counties, states, and compare them. And I think, all the reference data plots show that masks might help in the beginning, but I think it's maybe coincidental or what. But after a few days or even a few weeks, everyone meets at the same point. There's the same amount of infection rates, mask or no mask. And has anyone ever bothered to look at the packaging that their masks comes in? There isn't one that says it's going to protect you from a respiratory virus. I mean, I hate to harp on that stuff, but there's nothing that's infallible about these masks. So studies really prove they don't work. Real life examples show they don't work. And even the packaging says it can't protect you. What rational person says keep kids in masks? Seriously. I understand this is going to be a big step for some people to take off their masks. But the good news is there isn't a rush. You can choose to take the mask off when you're ready. Or not at all. That's the beauty of it. It's your choice. And that's, I think, what we need. I also want to make a point. As much as we all would like to, no one in this room is going to be able to mitigate or stop a virus that's been around for 2 years. It's impossible. The toothpaste is out of the tube. As much as you want to think you can, not even our president was able to do it. It's still here, probably going to be here tomorrow. Well, while I'm up here, sorry to switch gears on you, but why don't we have a flashing speed limit sign in front of our school? Honestly. I think we might be the only school in the area that doesn't have a flashing sign saying, 20 miles an hour, school zone, slow down. And why don't we have a trained crossing guard? I'm serious. I think everyone here has to wear a lot of hats. Thank you for what you guys do. But when it comes to crossing guards, it's not a next man up thing. There should be a trained crossing guard at that intersection. Or the police. Whatever. Anyway, I look around our area, I look at the schools, and the dominoes are falling. Private schools have gone mask optional. I'm sure you guys know it. I think Sears just went mask optional. Sunset Ridge just went mask optional. Winnetka went mask optional. Lightfoot made mask optional. I'm hoping you guys make the right vote. Just keep in mind, it's impossible to stop a virus, but it's not impossible to save a school and bring back North Shore's crown jewel. Thank you.
Derek Gaspar.
Hello. I'll be pretty brief. My name is Derek Gaspar. I have 3 kids in the district, 2 in middle school and 1 in the elementary school. I have a lot of feelings about this. I think everything that's been said, I agree with all of it. It's said better than I will say it. I just want to echo the idea that I love this community. I love how we've been so civil and respectful of what we've been all asking for today. When I see on the news or I see here and there people devolving and it's not what I want for my family. I know it's not what any of us want. I know that there's been a couple little flare-ups on a Facebook page here and there, but for the most part, it's been awesome. I think everyone's been really kind and respectful, and I think we need to protect that. What I don't understand right now is I feel like this is just inevitable, that we're already there, and I don't know why we're wasting any more time. Just even as far as whether we want to argue about mass working or working about, I feel like we're there as far as now it's time to protect the fabric of our community. We shouldn't devolve, and I feel like we're at that breaking point. Like we're hanging on to civility and respect here, and the ball's in your court to just keep that fabric from, breaking. And that's all.
Mary Gaspar.
Good evening. Hello to Dr. Osborne and our board. Thank you so much for everything you do. My name is Mary Gaspar. I have 3 daughters in District 37 in 8th, 6th, and 1st grade. We have been part of this district and wonderful Avoca community for 9 years. I'm here tonight to implore you to make mask wearing a choice for D37 families. We are not anti-maskers and have respectfully followed COVID protocol for the last 2 years. With the falling COVID hospitalizations, access to vaccines and medicines, and armed with the knowledge of the risk to our children, there is no reason why masks should be mandated in our schools. Our district COVID dashboard showed Avoca Elementary having 0 cases last week, and the middle school having just 1. If families wish to have their child wear a mask, more power to them. And for those like our family, I ask for the same respect. Our children are suffering learning loss, social emotional learning loss, and learning to see only the eyes of their peers and teachers for 8 hours a day. The masks act as a constant reminder to these children that we are not safe. And now, despite the science, we are at the mercy of hypocrisy and bureaucracy. During the formative years of their lives, the fallout of this policy will no doubt be vast. Our children see the hypocrisy and the political nature of mask wearing. They see that they, the least vulnerable to the virus, are being subjected more than anybody else to shoulder the burden of protecting those around them. They see their cousins living in other states maskless for the last year, happy and thriving. They see the blatant hypocrisy of wearing a mask while walking through a restaurant, but not when seated at their table, and then they scratch their heads why they can't do the same thing at school. People say kids are resilient, and they are. But they are also the most vulnerable and impressionable minds among us. They will do what they're told, and they will quietly learn things like adults can't be trusted, the science doesn't make sense, adults lie, teachers are scared, and society thinks kids spread disease more than adults. Because that's the way this appears. When indoor mask mandates are lifted before the schools and the media glorifies maskless celebrities at the Super Bowl while they continue to wear a face covering that the science itself has failed to show any definitive evidence of helping decrease the spread. I had sent you all the Urgency of Now toolkit 2 weeks ago, put together by virologists, pediatricians, and doctors, which advocates for a return to normalcy for the children as soon as possible. We don't have much time left in our school year. We need as much time as possible to reintroduce the kids to what faces and fearlessness looks like. My 8th grader has experienced her entire junior high experience marred with COVID disruptions. My 1st grader doesn't remember school maskless. She stares at the school yearbook every night for facial recognition. Every birthday wish, wish on a fallen eyelash, prayer to God out of her mouth is please make COVID go away. They don't complain, but we see it in every fiber of their short lives. COVID mitigations and what has become the new normal has taken over our lives and our community. If you travel outside of Illinois, you see and experience a vastly different perspective. This is why so many are moving and why we are considering the same. I know you guys are following rules from the governor, and as of recently, I know some of those rules have been thrown out the window. So now we see more and more schools going maskless in light of this new information. I am imploring you to do the same. The leadership from the state has failed us. Please, don't fail our kids too. Thank you.
Elena Martinelli.
Hi everyone, I'm Elena Martinelli, and I am not prepared because I didn't even know that I was going to have the opportunity to speak to you. I still take the opportunity because I am a research professor at Northwestern. I am an immunologist, a virologist. I've studied viruses for all my life, and I am a so-called expert. And so I would like to offer my opinion, like you've heard many others, regarding masks in kids. First of all, I would like to clarify that masks in adults do work. They have been shown to work in protecting adults from acquiring SARS-CoV-2 infection. However, the evidence in kids is much less clear, and that is probably because there's many theories, but probably because of how kids wear masks and the way in which the virus is transmitted between kids. And indeed, in school, it has been shown many times, proven basically, that it's mostly teachers that infect other teachers, and teachers that infect kids. Whoever wants references, please just contact me. I can bring them to you. and instead kids transmitting the virus to other kids. There's also very good, like we all know the numbers regarding pathogenesis in kids, even more with Omicron. I spoke many times with my colleagues in Northwestern regarding the issue of kids and not kids. Some of my colleagues agree with me. They're not very outspoken because it's not the main CDC view, although many are speaking out right now. And others object with questionable issues regarding the fact that cases are still high. However, as somebody else pointed out before, cases are absolutely meaningless at this point in the pandemic because we should really look at mortality, morbidity, hospitalization, ICU coverage, and things that actually do matter. The fact that somebody has a PCR positive test should not matter to anyone because it has never done so, really. I really just wanted to bring this up because I reviewed all the evidences. I reviewed also all the evidence that suggests that masks in kids reduce their ability to communicate, to recognize emotion and facial expression. The evidence is clear. There's no clear data that points to an issue with development, but those developmental studies are very long and so they require years. We do not want to get in the position of having the data because that means that whatever number of kids has gone through those number of years and those kids have lost those years and they have proven that the issue it has created problems with their development. So I was just trying to remind myself of all the points that I wanted to make. So finally, the reason that the governor in this state and also the government in New York gave for keeping the masks in school but not the masks in adults really makes no scientific sense because these kids are for hours in the class in an environment with other kids that are the same kids for the same amount of hours. And adults can go from place to place spreading the virus to other adults. In the same amount of hours, they would spread potentially exponentially the virus compared to kids that are with the same amount of people in the room for whatever number of hours. The last thing I want to add that I am not a lawyer. I do not understand legal matters. I have no idea what you can or cannot do. But if it was my decision, I would do anything in my power, and I would take risks, even personal risks, to stop masking kids.
Next is, I'm sorry, just give me a moment, Devin Gabori. Ariel, Corey?
I think they were just signing in for the meeting.
Oh, they I didn't know.
Yeah, that's probably just they wanted to do it.
Okay. So the next, I have a maybe for Tom Hers.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you. Since 2020, I've been sending emails to Superintendent Osborne. My statement has always been, why don't we take off masks? Let's see what happens in our school. I don't know if anybody's aware of this. The CDC has 17 members from around the world. That's what the CDC is made up of. We are barely the size of a gnat compared to the plural in this community. And we have a community of a CDC of 17 people telling us what to do. My daughter's in 7th grade, and I don't know that since 2020, between 6th grade and 7th grade, that there have been 10 kids who've been reported to have, 15 kids who've been reported to have COVID. It would seem to me now, with all the metrics going down concerning hospitalizations, ICU beds going down, hospital beds going down, it would be time to let's see what happens. Take the masks off and see if anything changes in these metrics where the kids start to show up surprisingly sick. I'd be very shocked by that. As an example, I see my daughter going to Mexico on an airplane, comes back fine, goes to Phoenix on an airplane to celebrate my father's 90th birthday, comes back fine, goes to restaurants where we wear a mask through the restaurant, but sit down, take it off, comes back fine. But somehow we're concerned that in a school, that all of a sudden this disease is going to jump out of the walls. And it's not. I think it's time to give the kids a chance and let's see what happens. I just don't believe that it's just going to appear out of nowhere. In late September of 2020, I got sick with COVID. And I then went last year in 2021 to have a physical, a yearly type physical. But before that, I went in to get to go and see about antibodies. So now 7 months later, after I've been sick, I have antibodies through the roof, and having a test done at Northwestern. And the antibodies are huge. I go to the doctor the next month in May, and my doctor says, in the middle of a pandemic, I think Delta had started to show its head. My doctor says in the middle of the pandemic, do not get vaccinated right now, but what you do need to do is go get your shingles vaccine. Finish that, and at the end of the summer, when we see where variants are, then think about going to get a COVID vaccine. She used some common sense. I mean, it made sense. At huge antibodies, there was no necessity to go get a vaccination at that particular point, but being at my age, it was important to get a shingles vaccine. When I was in law school, I recall one of my law professors, criminal law professor, said, don't throw your common sense out at the door. Use some common sense. And I just see so many people not using any common sense anymore. Yeah, I see this on Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and all these other things and crazy stuff. Say crazy things. But you guys have an opportunity to use some common sense. Let's see what happens when you take off the mask, which is going to happen. Whether it happens today, tomorrow, in a week, it's going to happen. You're going to have to find this out. And you're not protecting anybody from anything by refusing to use some common sense. I've been saying it since 2020, and I'll say it again now in 2022, almost 2 years later. Let's use some common sense, take the masks off, and let's show the world that, you know what, we don't fit under the same umbrella here in our little district as maybe some other part of the world. Each little nap is different.
I want to make sure I don't. Susie is up next. I don't have you. We still have more to go, but I don't have you next on the list. Sorry. Susie here? You? Okay. Then I think if I read it right, then the next is Sarah Shepard.
Can I still speak? He wasn't signed up to speak. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, actually, he wrote his name and then wrote maybe. So that's why I called him. And you are on the list.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Right. So next is Sarah Shepard.
Hi, I'm Sarah Shepard. I have a third grader and a kindergartner at Avoca. I'm actually here to read a statement from Cantor Susie Friedman, who also has a third grader and a first grader at Avoca. She says, "Dearest members of our school board, first of all, I want to thank you beyond measure for all you've done to help get our children back in school in person and as much as possible to help them resume the lives that children are entitled to. You have been extraordinary, going to great lengths, and frankly, have not been afraid to take a leap of faith. I cannot tell you how relieved Ross and I were that you allowed for in-person learning for our son Zach back during the height of the pandemic when no vaccine was available. In addition, despite the fact that Zev's teacher, Caroline Henson, was in her first trimester of pregnancy with twins, she too took the leap of faith in the mitigations and went in person to teach them because Kristen Moore knew all too well that students with special needs, such as Zev, simply cannot learn online. Ross and I will be forever grateful to Kristen for her foresight and to Caroline for her dedication and to all of you for signing off on it. In addition, when many other schools closed during highly contagious variants, you moved heaven and earth to keep us open. Thank you just does not seem to cut it. Today, I'm asking you to take another leap of faith, this time to again follow the science and doctor's advice to allow the children in our schools to self-select while wearing masks, when wearing masks. While I'm certainly grateful that Governor Pritzker is relaxing mask mandates in most public spaces on February 28th, the time for enforcing mask wearing amongst our school children has passed. The fact that most children suffer the least, schools, which have also been proven to have much lower transmission rates, vaccines are available, and many adults are vaccinated, supports this fact. It should not be that adults will be allowed to enter public places such as bars and restaurants with the highest rates of transmission and remove their masks while our children remain responsible for stopping the spread. If the general public is unmasking, so should our children. As you know, the CDC guideline states that masking is recommended in areas of highest transmission and low vaccination, and we do not fall into either category. In addition, the mental health risks greatly outweigh the minor health benefits of masking. It's becoming more the norm than the exception that we are seeing regular occurrences of mental illnesses among students at the Temple. Many of them are in treatment facilities, either full or part-time. Many have lost the will to live, and weekly we hear children of whose parents are locking knife drawers in order to keep them from harming themselves. The pandemic of health is turning into an epidemic of mental health amongst them. Dr. Lena Wen was one of the strongest advocates for masking and COVID medications last June when masks were removed. However, with the mental health crisis we are facing with students, she is now advocating that children be the first to have mitigations relaxed. I do not need to reiterate to this group about the learning that was lost in the last 2 years. Drs. Neeraj Sood and Jay Bhattacharya state in an article on the USC health policy that today adults have no reason to put their safety ahead of the well-being of school kids. Vaccinations are highly effective at keeping adults out of the hospital and even better at preventing death. A healthy, fully vaccinated teacher is close to impervious to threats posed by COVID-19 spread in the classroom. By now, every teacher in America has been offered the vaccine. Many were in the first priority group and even above vulnerable older people. We want to enhance the safety of adults. If we want to enhance the safety for adults further, we can do so by other measures such as improved ventilation and they're less intrusive than masking. Dr. Wen, in addition to other ER doctors who have appeared on CNN and MSNBC last week, also point to one-way masking with a good quality mask can be effective to those who are immunocompromised. The ER doctors highlighted the fact that they were protected from the virus by one-way masking even when no vaccination was available. I urge you on behalf of all children, we are trying so hard to help, and on behalf of my own, please allow our children to unmask when the rest of the state is allowed to. As Dr. Wen states in her interview on NPR, we must de-escalate this from being a five-alarm fire to something more manageable and understand that it will be with us and allow people to self-select in regards to masking. The children face unprecedented challenges today. They have to worry about being shot by someone carrying a deadly firearm every time they go to school. They worry, even as young as kindergarten, about not having a planet to live during their lifetimes. Personally and anecdotally, my own sweet son has enough challenges learning language, and having his teachers and faces covered makes it nearly impossible. I believe strongly that this is one burden we can relieve our children from. Please allow our families to self-select wearing masking. Many other districts around us and within our own Temple community are doing so, and I believe we must follow suit. That is all, Susie. I just had one quick question that is maybe more of a rhetorical question or maybe something to be asked later, but wondering if, I know that we follow the advice from the medical director, Dr. Bill Moria, is that the only medical advice that we are taking, or are there multiple medical professionals that we've been consulting throughout this whole pandemic? Because as we see, there's obviously differing opinions with different medical professions. So.
Thank you. Alex Hurt.
Good evening. My name is Callie Hurst. I'm the 7th grader here at Emery Murphy. Dr. Osborne, during your interview published in Chicago Tribune on February 2nd, you stated numbers are declining and you asked for some guidance to develop a plan to off-ramp masking in school. In that same article, the superintendent from District 36 also wrote to advocate for exit strategy for COVID-19 mitigation. Just 2 days later, when the court ruling came down and there's actual guidance and legal basis for us to off-ramp masking in school, our district decided to continue mandate masks, while District 36 implemented the plan to go mask optional. Subsequently, on February 15, Jay Carr voted 9-0 that the governor couldn't reinstate mask mandate in contravention of court ruling. The emergency rules ended on that day. However, your email on the morning of February 16th stated we will continue to enforce the mask mandate despite all the legal decisions, citing possible reversal of the TRO and changing back and forth would be disruptive. Well, almost 600 schools statewide don't share that sentiment, have since gone mask optional. Granted, District 36 was named as defendant in the lawsuit and our district wasn't. That was one of the reasons your letter used to justify the decision to unilaterally disregard and ignore the court order of February 4th. So is this what it will take for our kids to have an option, to have a choice, so our district need to be named in a lawsuit? Well, given now we're in the minority of schools still holding on to this mask mandate, the same mask now your trusted doctor have admitted, what most of us have known for 2 years, it's nothing more than facial declaration. For it to be truly effective, people who wish to be protected should wear a fitted N95 and not to be constantly tucked down and to take removal for food or drinks. I wouldn't bore you with the science of how masks work differently between standing and sitting, between for celebrities, politicians, or world leaders versus our kids in school. So what we can logically see here, this is not really about public health or protecting others. So what is this really about? In the last meeting, Mr. Hurst inquired if the decision of masking children is tied to the ESSER funds. He said you were not sure and we'll get back to him. So far, I don't believe he has received the answer. But based on your application for ESSER 3, on page 6 of 62, it is clearly marked one of the requirements for safe return plan is universal and correct wearing of masks. Just earlier this month, Dr. Brownlow, superintendent of Palos Heights District 128, tweeted, by removing one mitigation could put our federal grant relief of $1.3 million at risk, as mitigations are expected as part of those guidelines for receiving the ESSER funds. Perhaps unintentionally, someone's finally speaking the truth. As of February 2nd, based on our correspondence, the application for ESSER 3 wasn't finalized, and $451,520 has not been released yet. So if this is a reason to continue mask our children, that as parents whose tax dollars actually funding the school, we deserve some transparency. So for the total ESSER funds of $696,757, the parents can collectively make an informed decision as to whether or not we want to trade off our kids' ability to breathe freely for this money we can certainly use for the district. And the same transparency should be afforded to show what we have done and plan to do with this additional funds. I strongly urge us all to get back into business. Your job to ensure our kids to receive a quality education, as what Rob mentioned earlier, not to constantly promote or push for medical procedures. The teacher's job of teaching them fundamentals, shaping their impressionable young minds, and not to be the mask place day in, day out. And for the parents to teach them values and to make the necessary medical decision with the guidance of our own individual physicians. I thank you for your time.
apologize if I don't pronounce your last name correctly, Martha Bosick.
Hi, my name is Martha Bosick, and I'm a 7th grader and a freshman in district. And I am also the third attorney speaking tonight, and I think that that's pretty relevant. And I would agree with Yasmina, who mentioned that I don't think that you're getting good legal advice. When the decision came down on February 4th, I read it that Saturday backwards and forwards, including all statutes and citations. Regardless of the fact of whether or not you were named a defendant in that suit, we know that the rules on which you based your policies were invalidated as of that date. I cannot describe it in any other word or any other adjective other than an obstinate stance about dropping the masks. I know that you're an intelligent board, you have an intelligent, group of parents here. I know that the writing is on the walls and you will drop it. But the fact that you haven't dropped it already is really perplexing to me. It makes no sense. The governor has referred to as the emperor with no clothes. I feel like some of these school districts that have not followed suit in dropping the mandate are the school districts with no authority, with no clothes. If the rules on which you relied on have been invalidated by the judicial branch, and that was backed up by the legislature, you have no authority. I'm not up here asking you for your permission or asking you to drop the policy. You literally have no authority. Right after the decision came down, I emailed Kane and every individual board member to let them know this, as well as the superintendent of New Trier. As of that date, our compliance, my children's compliance, is no longer voluntary. It's not. And since it's not voluntary, you have to tell me, what are you doing? It's a violation of due process, okay? That's what it says. We're entitled to due process. You have no authority to continue masking. I know that you'll drop it. It needs to be dropped immediately. Don't off-ramp for a week, 2, 3, 4, or after spring break. It needs to happen now. You have no independent authority. School boards, so again, with free of charge, let me offer you some pro bono legal advice. The delegation of authority to school districts regarding public health and safety is an abuse of power and was never contemplated by the legislature. So if this is true, then on what authority do you rely on to continue the mandate? The rules that the emergency rules have been invalidated. So on what authority are you basing it? I don't think that's a question there's no independent authority because it's non-delegable. Can somebody answer that question? On what authority are you basing the continued masking of the kids at this point in time, post February 4th? Does anybody know the answer?
Sumi, do you just want to clarify how
This is not, we'll take your comment, ma'am, and we'll discuss it.
Right, but it's a question, So I'm taking a different approach, and I'm not asking you to lift it. I'm asking you to comply with the law and stop exercising perceived authority that you don't have. So it needs to stop immediately. And like I said, if you're getting any legal advice to the contrary, it's bad advice. You have learned, you have scientists, you have lawyers, you've heard from us. Like I said, I've read it backwards and forwards. There's nothing on which you could base the continued masking. I'm not imploring you. I'm not begging you. I'm simply asking you to comply with what the law is and to operate inside the boundaries of your authority. Thank you.
I'm sorry to have to follow that presentation. It's a very thorough presentation. Mine is actually more as it relates to medical. I'm a physician. I've been practicing internal medicine for 20 plus years. And I actually, I want to comment more on the mitigation because I'm assuming that that's going to happen at some point here. My concern is that the tying of vaccination status and things like that in children is going to sort of determine our mitigation steps. And that part is concerning to me. Number one, because in none of this process for the last 2 years has natural immunity even been included. And we know that that is extensive. And we know that there's even cases, extensive cases in Singapore from the first SARS that show T-cell response even now. So, I mean, it's extremely relevant, and it doesn't take into account that large population of people that are infected. Secondly, children being infected, not only is the severity of their illness, I don't want to say minuscule, but it's reserved for only the very kind of medically ill subpopulation of children. For the most part, those children are exposed and are able to mount some type of natural immunity. The younger they develop that immunity, there may be some potential for long-term immunity. And part of that relates to the development of herd immunity, which, again, I think that is the gist of vaccinating and kind of limiting. Actually, I don't know what the goal is anymore of limiting exposures, because that would actually facilitate. No, I mean, really, I feel like now we're not stressed anymore in the hospitals. Now that was the intention in the beginning. We had sort of a cutoff in Illinois of, okay, 8%. It was reasonable. We didn't know what we were dealing with, so 8% was sort of the cutoff. If we had it for 2 weeks in a row, we would sort of increase our mitigation strategies, and everything made sense. But now we know how to deal with it in the hospitals. Now the severity has declined. We have treatments, we have vaccines. And so I feel like now is the time that we should be letting exposure sort of naturally occur in a low level, so that, I mean, this is something we're going to deal with. And so, these are all parts of herd immunity and of building and protection of the community. And that's why I feel like that is very relevant, and that once we are starting to talk about mitigation, it should not be tied to a number of vaccination rates in the children.
Bill Tuma?
Hi guys, thank you for everything that you guys do. I know you guys volunteer your time, and really appreciate how you improve our community. I did get the chance to talk to a few people, and they really encouraged me to come here. And even though my kids have been in the district for 8 years, I guess that means I wasn't here. My kids weren't in band a few years ago. But Dr. Osborne, we spoke a few weeks ago, and you encouraged me to come, so thank you. This is a new thing for me, so I appreciate it. I would like our district to follow the law and make masks optional. There's over 600 other districts in Illinois have already done, so including schools like Sunset Ridge, Blanco, Winnetka, and one more, OLPH, which is private. But these districts were not involved in litigation, but are now mask optional. I'm here today representing my 2 boys that really don't want to wear masks in school, especially my youngest. It's uncomfortable and a distraction from his studies. Some kids may find comfort in a mask, but many others are suffering from this decision. I'm here to speak up for them too. As a matter of personal choice, I think it's really important. If you feel like the shot offers a protection, you can choose to take it. If you feel that the mask offers protection, you can choose to wear one or several, like the N95 mask. If you choose to take supplements like vitamin D, C, zinc, and quercetin, or maybe natural immunity like some in the past. But basically, personal choices. We have talked about finding off-ramp to mitigation effects. I kind of believe we've missed the exit. Case rates were over 12%, and now we're down below the mitigation threshold set by the governor. So I think it's time. The governor is ending mask mandate on the 28th, except for healthcare, schools, and congregational settings. The student population is the least at risk. So if the governor feels it's safe for adults, it should also be safe for the student population. 2 years ago, the governor issued numerous emergency mandates in response to the pandemic, and the mandates were to be temporary. Pursuant to the law, these emergency mandates should expire after 30 days. Yet Governor Pritzker actively disregarded the law and continued issuing mandates. These mandates included the mask mandate, were not approved through the due process of the law. The legislature passes laws, not the governor and his agencies. Bypassing this due process violates the constitutional rights of each citizen of the state, including our students. Shortly after a judge struck down Pritzker's mask mandate is unconstitutional, a bipartisan committee unanimously voted against reimposing another K-12 school mask, vaccine, and testing mandate. Governor Pritzker has ignored the clear directives of the legislature. Our school board is blindly following the dictator's edicts rather than abiding by the law. If our district attorneys are condoning or approving these mandates, then our district attorneys are not following the law. Yet they are in fact advocating that our district disregard the law, and this opens our district to lawsuits. Something that comes to mind with the law is something that Benjamin Franklin said: those who give up essential liberty to pursue a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And before I conclude, I have one question for the board, which you guys can answer later. But I would like to know what this teachers' union stance is on the mask optional. If there have been any polls taken by the district or the teachers' union's position.
Thank you so much. It's clear all of you and us feel very passionately about this topic and our children. So I can't thank you enough for making it out here, taking time to make comments. Yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't get to talk.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is all right.
Did you sign up?
Yeah, I'll just make my way up there.
Yep, sure.
I checked in the box, but...
Oh, can you just tell me your name to see what?
Sure. My name is Elizabeth Ryan.
I apologize.
No worries. It's cool.
Sure.
So I'm Elizabeth Ryan. I have two daughters. One who's already gone through Murphy and Avoca, and one who's a 7th grader currently. So I want to start too by thanking all of you for being here and for your service. You guys, you're really doing your service at a tough time. And I want to say how parents, I learned so much tonight listening, and I think it's awesome that we're willing to show up and advocate for our kids. I'll tell you, it's frustrating that we have to show up during a snowstorm to advocate for our kids with the very people that we send our kids to for 7 hours a day. This is exhausting. And it's frustrating there's 600 other schools that are mask optional, and we have to come here tonight and talk to you guys. Disappointing. I understand we are trying to do our best. We all have different motives. It's frustrating. I will not repeat all the science. I've also emailed everything that I read to Dr. Osborne, so if you need to see it, ask him. I won't repeat what other parents have said, but I will say that what we're asking for is equal educational environment. We now have schools within a mile from us with kids going mask optional, and we'd like that for our own children. We want to have a place where we can send them where their mental, emotional, and physical wellness is not being threatened. I'm here to, I like how someone else said, ask you to simply follow the law, not beg you, not implore you, to make our school mask optional, but to simply follow the law, independent of vaccination status. We very much believe in medical freedom and believe in families doing what is best for themselves and their own children. We should have the same exemptions possible around COVID vaccine that we have with any other vaccine if it happens to be mandated to go to school. An argument I've heard when we talk about taking masks off kids or making it mask optional is that we have immune-compromised kids in our district. I hear that. I have a dear friend who's an immune-compromised kid at Avoca. And I hear her fear when I talk to her. What I believe in, and what my family has been lucky enough to experience here at Avoca Marie Murphy through our own tragedy the past few years, is that we have a really strong and loving community.
I believe in showing up for each other. I believe that we can come up with other solutions for those families. You guys can sign my name first on that list. But taking the healthy kids down to the lowest common denominator and masking them is not a viable solution. So, as you've heard tonight, I think the evidence is there that we could go mask optional. I do wish we were on the front end of this, and going forward, I hope we are that school district that can be on the front end of this instead of having to show up here tonight and fight for this. I do have faith that you guys will do the right things for our kids. That said, we're willing to take action for our kids. Our family, along with other D37 families, have engaged legal counsel. We will be moving forward with filing with Thomas DeBoer. Under the advisement of our attorney, he asked me to come here tonight and ask the same question. Under what legal authority do you have to mask our children? He gave me the answer. You've heard the answer from the other attorneys tonight. And so I hope you guys do the right thing. Thanks for listening to us.